Chapter 2. We reached the outskirts of York just before sunrise. I was faint with exhaustion, but Robert of Blackpool mysteriously regained his vigor after the 5th mile. When he saw that I would no longer be able to stand, let alone run, we stopped. Down this lane is the house of an old friend of mine. His name is John Sampson. I told him that you might need a place to stay while I went about my business. He is a good man and will keep you well fed, of that be assured. If all goes well, I shall see you late again on Trinity Sunday. If I am delayed or fall into some harm, John will take care of you. My apologies for putting you through this, my young friend. God bless you, and farewell. And with that, he sprinted off as if chased by dogs. I staggered halfway down the lane and collapsed. I awoke on a comfortable straw mattress to the brightness of mid-afternoon, the sounds of conversation, and the smell of mutton pie. A bowl of water and a fresh towel lay beside the bed. "There's a good lad," thundered a huge man with red hair. "You're looking none the worse for wear. Wake up now and have some pie and beer. You need fed." With gratitude, I soon learned that I was in the modest yet comfortable home of John and Marjorie Sampson. From the nautical accoutrements, I inferred that he enjoyed fishing, and after a conversation with him over a skillfully spiced mutton pie and a pint of beer, I learned that he was indeed a member of the Fishers and Mariners Guild of the city of York, and that he had sailed with my mentor to the continent and back many years ago. I was very cautious about what I told him about myself. It seemed unnecessary to tell him that I had been a mute for the past 6 years, and common sense not to mention the troll. We managed to talk of Father Blackpool's eccentricities, the fishing in Southport, and the virtues of well-made boots. Upon learning that I had been copying Cicero, St. Ambrose, and the Venerable Bede, both John Sampson and his wife furrowed their brows. She said that I looked pale and obviously missed a mother's love. He said that I merely lacked fresh air, hard work, good food, and rest. But that evening, after a large dinner of roasted pork and leek stew, when I astonished them both before the fire with miraculous and edifying tales from the ecclesiastical history, they decided that being a young cleric might not be without its amusements. Not to be outdone, John told a story in return about the time he arm wrestled a man for 6 hours until the other man's forearm broke cleanly in half. On my second jug of beer, I found this anecdote as mirth-provoking as they did. In short, before the evening was over, they had grown fond of me, and I of them. "Now tell a tale of Sir Galahad," he begged. "Tell of Sir Galahad and King Frey." "I do not know that tale." "Then allow me to tell you." We laughed, told tales, and praised the virtues of Sir Galahad into the night. As we prepared for bed, they assured me that I would be welcome to stay with them as long as the crazy priest went gallivanting around the countryside on priestcraft bent, and that I was free to explore the city on my own, visit the cathedral, and even take a couple of pence to buy myself a new hat, as long as I helped with the wood splitting and other chores. I thanked them, put on a borrowed nightshirt that was much too large, blew out my candle, and tucked myself in. How was I to sleep? I had already slept much of the day, and until now had been denied a chance to reflect. In solitude and darkness, I was able to focus on the questions that had been nagging me all day in spite of the conversations, stories, and ale-induced cheer. Where was Father Blackpool? Why had he left me here? Was it not this time last night that we were dining with a 200-year-old troll? The unreality of it all increased yet again. But my disappointment and suspense were real. Last night, the air had been charged with adventure and possibility. Now I was a bystander, banished to a slumbering domesticity, When would Father Blackpool learn that I could be trusted to face a peril with the best of them? And a plague upon it, I almost forgot. What of the girl? Was she alive or dead? Why go to Carlisle with a vial of troll's blood? What did he mean, that he might fall into some harm? The room started swaying. I said half a pater noster and fell asleep. The next day was warm and clear, and I awoke with the birds, only to find that John had already left for work. After a generous breakfast of dried beef, bread, and fried mushrooms washed down with cream, I chopped a small pile of wood, accepted 2p with mock reluctance, thanked my hostess, promised to be home for dinner, and set off to explore the big city. York did not disappoint. The narrow, winding streets were filled with marvels. 40 years ago, York was even more economically sound than it is now, the cloth-making industry doing quite well and exporting as far as Iceland and Gascony. When I was a boy, York as a religious center was only slightly overshadowed by Canterbury, and it was clearly still the administrative center for the government of Northern England. I thrilled at the possibility of catching a glimpse of the Archbishop, or maybe even a cardinal, as I traipsed the cobblestone. Never before had I seen so many people, such luxurious food, such skilled services, so many horses and boxes coming and going, such clothes people wore. The gentry walked the streets with bright velvet coats with buttons of solid gold, and among them were men who had made large fortunes in international trade and who tried to outdress them. Certainly it was the first time I had seen a woman with a hat that must have weighed more than 10 pounds. Which was more bizarre, the world of the troll or the world of man? And then there was the cathedral. I saw more carved images on that afternoon than I had seen in all my previous days combined. A more beautiful church I had never seen, nor any building 1/20th that large. The central tower was far from finished, but the nave, only 3 years from completion, was and is the highest and broadest cathedral nave in all of England. The ribbed vaulting, the web of carved detail, the endless sea of sparkling colored glass, these were enough to dizzy a young boy's wits. Here could a fallen wretch dare to lift his puny voice to God. The next day was Wednesday, and I had promised to accompany John to the docks. As he and most of his fellow fishers were unlettered, I was to help them learn their lines for the forthcoming Corpus Christi play. It had become a recent tradition on this feast day for the most important trade guilds to perform a biblical play for the entertainment and instruction of the townsfolk. Since Corpus Christi focuses on and celebrates Christ's presence in the Eucharist, and by extension, the fact that we're all members incorporated in his mystical body, the Church, it was meet that the entire city express the unity of their civic body also, and to dignify labor by asserting the trade guilds as the useful limbs of that body. Appropriately, the Guild of Fishers and Mariners was to perform a play called Noah and the Flood. The Brother Guild of Shipwrights would precede them with a play entitled The Building of the Ark. The other guilds did similarly relevant plays. The armorers would do Adam and Eve driven from the garden, the better to display the angel's breastplate and flaming sword. The candlemakers would do The Angels and the Shepherds. They had devised a way to make a large star of many candles. The goldsmiths, The Three Kings, the better to show off their wares. The barbers, The Baptism of Christ, to show that Christ is the leech or physician of mankind. And the butchers, The Death of Christ. Grisly trade symbolism indeed. And the mercers, who weigh goods against standard weights to determine their value, would perform The Last Judgment, a harrowing spectacle in which the value of human souls would be weighed against the standard of Christ. Over 50 plays in all. The ambitious project was to stretch from creation until doomsday, and to last from before sunrise until after midnight. What greater urban miracle could York have presented to a young cleric from Southport? John was to reprise his lead role of Noah, and his memory proved impressive from last year. I assisted some of the others who were slower and had trouble with the poetry, yet they were all seamen and therefore natural storytellers, and to add to the authenticity, looked as if they belonged on a boat. 2 actually smelled of fish guts. When they had lapses of memory, I merely read the lines aloud to them. After the first rehearsal, the play already promised to be good. We returned late in the evening for dinner, and Goodwife Sampson was waiting for us. "God's toenails!" she exclaimed. "Where have you been? The sun's a-setting. Your meat is cold." "Mary, woman, you know we have the plate ready for. I done told you that." "But the lad, John, you know the priest has told you to have him home before sundown. He warned you sternly, and now you've gone and done it." "Done what, you silly mare?" "Made him miss a message from the girl. She came at sundown. Quite proper and polite she was, and pretty too, about his age. Said she brought an important message from the priest. You missed her, Tom. She said she had some letters and something to give you from the priest, and something from herself. She was very upset she missed you, poor girl. She left a purse of monies for you." "Letters?" I said. "The priest sent me letters?" "Yes, lad, 2 letters, and a small box. Here." The first letter was the larger and read as follows. "Robert, by the grace of God, priest of the Holy Church of Blackpool, although unworthy, sends unceasing good wishes in Christ to his servant Thomas. Again, let me express my sorrow at leaving you on the road, but as a human life was at stake, I know you will understand and approve. I have good news. The object we received from our friend proved immediately effectual. The girl whose life you helped to save is named Catherine Laporte. She, her noble family, and their entire household overflow with prayers of gratitude and tears of joy. I have no time to celebrate, but must away to Carlisle to fulfill my obligations there. If the good weather holds, it should be possible to make it to Carlisle by this Sunday of Whitsuntide, and then back to return what we owe to our friend by the following Sunday of the Blessed Trinity. With God's grace, I hope to meet you late that night. With all of this behind us, we should be able to celebrate Corpus Christi with feasting and mirth. I am set with a beautiful fresh horse for my journey. I confide to you that I find it odd that my business takes me to a particular point outside Carlisle. It is the exact spot where the lender N and I met 26 years ago. I am as mystified by the request as you are. Blessings to you and your kind hosts. The second letter was almost illegible and read as follows. Robert, priest of Blackpool, to his servant Thomas. I was hoping to begin my journey yesterday, but young Catherine had a sudden relapse and was once again in grave danger. She is fine now, healthier than ever, with a mysterious new fluency in ancient Greek. The delay is unfortunate because now I cannot make my journey in time under the best conditions. Yet I must leave for Carlisle immediately. You have seen this small box before and know what it contains. You must return it to the one who loaned it to us by the appointed date. Go alone. Tell no one of this. Keep the box safe. Guard it at all costs. Be careful. People are getting suspicious. Trust no one. Do not fail. In haste, R. What's the matter, Tom? You've gone all pale, lad, said John from what sounded to be a mile away. It is nothing, I lamely replied. What's in the box? Asked his wife. What did the priest say? What did the pretty girl give you? Kate, I think her name was. I excused myself as politely as possible and went to my room. An argument then ensued between Marjorie and John over my insolence and the proper course of retribution. Marjorie felt that I should have my ears boxed and be made to read the letters. John placated her somewhat by agreeing that I had been rude, but insisted that the contents of the letters and box were private. He promised to upbraid me for my lack of respect and put the matter to rest by convincing her that poking her nose into Robert of Blackpool's business could bring unwanted trouble. I listened to this exchange from under the covers of my bed, but was concerned with a more pressing matter. What should I do with this invaluable and potentially dangerous relic? Should I keep it on my person, or should I hide it somewhere? I fretted over this question most of the night until I fell asleep with the box containing the index finger of St. Joseph of Arimathea under my hand. I slept so lightly that I awoke before both Samsons. I decided to act quickly. I took some fishing wire and quietly secured the box on the underside of the table beside my bed. This way, even if someone got hold of me or searched my room, he would be unlikely to find his object. I had to content myself with this minimal consolation. When she awoke, Goodwife Samson seemed to hold no grudge and was apparently satisfied that John would reprimand me privately. In fact, she appeared abashed that her spleen had gotten the better of her and kindly served me an extra cup of cream before breakfast. On the way to the docks, however, John did not reprimand me, but told me he admired my strong will. He patted my back and said that I was becoming a man, and a tough one indeed to have crossed his wife in any way. I spent most of the day talking to fishermen and watching the boats on the Ouse River. The mariners participating in the play quit work early and congregated around John, who led the rehearsal. More than ever, as my difficulties pressed upon me, I craved the respite of creativity and make-believe. They talked about the comedy of the play and came up with good ideas to make it funnier. I pointed out the symbolism and spiritual meaning of certain lines and offered suggestions of how to balance the comedy with the serious message. On the surface, the play was merely an entertaining vehicle for laughter, centering on Noah's inability to persuade his shrewish wife to enter the ark. After much bickering and abusive language, she strikes him on the face, and he is forced to carry her onto the ark, kicking and screaming to the delight of the audience. When the flood ensues, the nagging woman has a complete change of heart. In reality, though, the play is about Christian redemption and the waters of baptism. The ark in our production was constructed in 3 levels, 3 being the symbolic number of the church, and Noah, who brings his loved ones to safety over the waters of death, is a type and figure of Christ. His wife, of course, represents the natural human of the old reality until purified by mortifying water when she becomes a new creation. The men were impressed by my understanding, and one of them suggested that since the young apprentice playing Noah's wife was absent with a cold and would be sick for many days, I should usurp his place. The guild was unanimous in agreement, which, I confess, flattered my vanity in no small degree. When we recited the play that afternoon, I did my best to imitate Goodwife Samson at her most choleric, and John's performance doubled in quality as he attempted to manage his unruly spouse. The difference in our size made it especially funny. At first, I found it difficult to strike him, but he begged me to his face as hard as I could and assured me that he could take my best efforts, which he did to wonderful effect. Getting through the scene without collapsing into fits of laughter was difficult for everyone. That evening, when we returned home, the reality of my situation weighed upon me. I checked beneath the table to make sure that the finger was secure, then kept to myself after supper, meditated, guarded the relic, and wondered how the troll would take my assurance of Robert's success in Carlisle without any proof. How would he regard me without the protective presence of my guardian? Would he thank me, eat me, or turn me into a goat? I dreaded our inevitable meeting, but was anxious to get the precious bone out of my care. The days passed in relative uniformity. I spent the mornings doing odd chores for Goodwife Samson, the early afternoons exploring York or visiting the docks, the late afternoons rehearsing our play, and the evenings guarding the relic and worrying about the troll. Whit Sunday came with a beautiful mass at the cathedral, and the following Friday, the Feast of the Visitation, proved for most a sweet mixture of solemnity and joy, but for me, only fear and trembling. 2 more days, and the encounter with Nehtaehkin must needs take place. The rehearsal went especially well that day because my nerves were so on edge that I truly felt as one rebelling against an overpowering wave of unpredictable chaos. I returned home just before sundown to find that the fishing wire beneath the table had been cut and that the box containing Joseph's finger was gone.